Kia ora, I'm Paula, Manager of Western Bay Museum in Katikati. Welcome to our exhibition, Service and Sacrifice, which is about sharing the heroic stories of New Zealand women during wartime. Women's rights, or should I say lack of rights, meant that even after World War II, they were not acknowledged, and their outstanding efforts, in fact, their records were destroyed. History seldom records the contribution of women. In our exhibition, we have stories from Te Puke, Balladicki, Soldier's Friend and Fundraiser, Marjorie Harris nursing with Dr. McIndoe and the famous Guinea Pig Club, Henny Pore, Jane Foley, a lady that walked in two worlds and gave water to both sides after the Battle of Pukehinahina, the Battle of Gate Pa. Marjorie Shaw and Betty Miller, the land girls from the Hume farm here in Katikati, producing produce for the soldiers in the Pacific. Etty Rout, the wickedest woman of Britain. She was a New Zealand woman. Vida McLean, we have her World War I uniform on display. She was a nurse, and in World War II, she served as a nurse as well. She was a huge influencer. There's so many fabulous stories, and we look forward to sharing them with you as soon as we can.
Kia ora. My name is Pauline McCowan. I'm a volunteer at the Western Bay Museum, and I've been very involved in the research for this present exhibition. When the nurses who survived the sinking of the Marquette arrived in Salonika, now called Thessalonica, they were donated clothing, borrowed clothing, Red Cross singlets and khaki golf coats. And you'll notice in the picture of the survivors that they're wearing a variety of hats. And that was probably how they kept their hair up, because women in those days always appeared in hats in public, and they all had long hair. And in the sinking of the ship, the nurses lost all their possessions. The British and Canadian nursing sisters in Salonika donated them hairbrushes and hair clips. Now remember this, these women had been in the water from 9:30 in the morning till late afternoon in long dresses and long hair. How hard would that have been, swimming and trying to stay afloat? One of the New Zealand sisters at the sinking of the Marquette was picked up by the British minesweeper Lynx, and one of the officers carried her to his cabin. She was completely exhausted. He laid her down on his bunk and he took her clothes off, saying to her, "This is not a time for mock modesty, you are done." He clothed her in warm dry pyjamas and then had his steward bring in warm coffee and brandy to revive her and give her comfort. No mock modesty involved. When the torpedo struck the ship, the sisters practiced the drills they had been taught for the several days of the journey. Jeannie Sinclair told her family later, "There was no noise, not a single scream. I cannot think how it was that we were so cool and collected." And Edith Wilkins said, "I was so proud of the New Zealand girls, not a murmur from them, they were so brave." As well as being honoured and remembered in the hearts and minds of their families, the sisters who lost their lives in the sinking of the Marquette are remembered in memorials in various parts of the world. The Five Sisters window in the north transept of York Minster, England, honours all the women of the British Empire who died in World War I. In Mikra, Greece, there is a memorial where the sisters are honoured, and Margaret Rogers, who was found in a lifeboat, identified by the name on her watch. She's buried in that cemetery there. And in Christchurch, there is a nurses' memorial chapel where the sisters are honoured and remembered. They are also listed on the Memorial Online Cenotaph database at Auckland War Memorial Museum. On the 26th of October 1915, some of the survivors were called to give evidence into the sinking of the Marquette. Nurses Edith Popplewell and Edith Wilkin were amongst them. A lot of fuss was made of them, and I quote, "They were so good and kind and made us laugh and petted and flattered us as though we were queens instead of two very draggled-looking nurses in shrunken dresses and no hats and black eyes. And when they couldn't show their sympathy and kindness anymore and we were just leaving, the commander called for cheers for the New Zealand nurses. And I wish you could have heard those 3 British cheers. But the question that was never asked at the inquiry is why were the New Zealand nurses not on the hospital ship? Hospital ships were available to take them from Alexander, but they were not put on a hospital ship. Hospital ships covered by the Geneva Convention and wearing red crosses. They would have been a lot safer, we hope.